All right, breaking news. Zelensky just decided to punch back against the Trump admin in a public forum after Trump has spent the better part of his presidency demeaning Zelensky, bullying Zelensky, and weakening Ukraine's position on the global stage. And now Zelensky is using his platform to publicly rebuke Trump and his lies. In one post, Zelensky undermines Trump's entire argument, shows that he's a liar, and does it in a really diplomatic way. Honestly, Zelensky didn't respond with outrage or personal attacks like other world leaders that we know. He responded with principle. He responded very calmly and showed Trump that he's being incredibly contradictory and Trump is going against his own policy. So we'll break down what Zelensky said in 1 second. But just to rewind, this morning, Trump said that Zelensky was, quote, prolonging the killing field. This reads, President Donald Trump on Wednesday lashed out at Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, saying that the Ukrainian leader is prolonging the killing field after he pushed back on ceding Crimea to Russia as a part of a potential peace plan. And this is the post that Trump made. I'm not going to read it all, but he said, Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. Remember that line. Quote, Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. This statement is very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama. All right, I'm not reading the rest of that, but Trump's spin of this is entirely an inverse of reality. Trump is the one that is weakening Ukraine's position when he comes out there and says that the U.S. is this close from giving up on the war. I mean, just think about this. If Trump signals to Putin that the U.S. will give up, all Putin has to do is just wait it out. If he waits it out long enough, then Ukraine loses its biggest base of support, and boom, Putin has essentially created a new strategy of imperial ambition that Hitler just wished he thought of. If Hitler would have just been a little bit slower and taken chunk by chunk and let the West tucker itself out, maybe he would have been better. But he didn't because he was on meth all the time. There are other reasons as well. But going back to this, before we even dig in to Zelensky rebuking Trump, let me show you how terrible of a negotiator Trump is in the course of the next minute or two. Trump, within his first month, declared global tariff war against every other country. And now 2 or 3 months in, he has successfully backed down from that war, made exemptions for the biggest export coming from China, and gotten zero material concessions from any country. Like, the idea that we have to start a global trade war to get a South Korean diplomat to the United States in the first place is really dumb. But secondly, Trump didn't even get those concessions. He is the worst negotiator ever, and this brings me back to what happened with Russia, because since day one, Trump has lost any leverage that Ukraine could have. I've explained this a few times, but right now, Russia does have more leverage just as a function of their size, as a function of their military, as a function of the amount of land they've captured. Now, what Ukraine wants to do is level the playing field, which they've done a good job at doing. And you do that by getting supplies from the West, getting intelligence from the West, having allies that help level the playing field, or security guarantees. Now, what Trump has done is not allowed Ukraine to level the playing field. Actually, the opposite. He's taken away any sort of leverage, taken away any sort of material support, and made Ukraine's position on the global stage a lot more untenable and a lot harder to defend. So honestly, I really wish Zelensky would push back harder and earlier, but he can't. I understand why he can't. You can't just further push the crybaby away. But this is a good example of Zelensky deciding, like, dude, you can't just lie about us. And here's where it begins. So remember, Trump's main gripe was that Zelensky did not want to recognize the occupation of Crimea. He was shitting on Zelensky because he would not recognize the occupation of Crimea. So Zelensky responds and points out the hypocrisy. He says, quote, emotions have run high today, but it is good that 5 countries met to bring peace closer. He's talking about a 2018 deal. Ukraine, the USA, the UK, France, and Germany. The sides expressed their views and respectfully received each other's positions. It's important that each side was not just a participant, but contributed meaningfully. The American side shared its vision. Ukraine and other Europeans presented their input, and we hope that it is exactly such joint work that will lead to lasting peace. We are grateful to partners. Ukraine will always act in accordance with its constitution, and we are absolutely sure that our partners, in particular the USA, will act in line with its strong decision. And he demonstrates right here how bad faith of an actor Trump is and how bad faith of an actor America is by proxy, because in 2018, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, released a press release, again, in 2018. Now, please remind me in the comments, who was president in 2018? Because they came to a deal under Trump's first term. Russia, through its 2014 invasion of Ukraine and its attempted annexation of Crimea, sought to undermine a bedrock international principle shared by democratic states, that no country can change the borders of another by force. Remember, the first Trump admin was a lot more center, and that's kind of weird to say now, because the first Trump admin was an effing mess, but the Trump admin had a lot less crazy, scary positions due to the guardrails in place around Trump. This is just a fact. The states of the world, including Russia, agree to this principle in the United Nations Charter, pledging to refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity of another state. And then they say, the United States calls on Russia to respect the principles to which it has long claimed to adhere and to end its occupation of Crimea. So not only is Trump now saying the opposite, but he's showing that the US cannot be trusted on shit. We will say in one breath that Russia cannot occupy Crimea, that it is not something anybody should recognize. Then in the same administration, well, I guess not the same administration, but under the same president a few years later, you can then say that Russia actually does have the right to occupy, and everybody should recognize that. So in 2014, when Russia first invaded and illegally annexed Crimea, it was the first time since World War II that a European country redrew its borders by force. So under the Obama administration, which I personally think Obama should have been a little bit stronger off the bat, but that's a different conversation, they responded quickly with sanctions, with NATO mobilization, and a unified Western front to isolate Putin. Now Trump is throwing that policy in the trash and throwing a lifeline to Putin in this process, which legitimizes his tactics and just sets the West back. I was going to say decades, but it's honestly almost 100 years. It sets the West back almost 100 years because, as I said, that is the first time post-World War II that a European country has tried to redraw its borders by force. So I'm actually really glad that Zelensky decided to respond by fact-checking Trump with Trump's own declaration, because that's what we need right now. We need leaders that stand up for democracy. I mean, today we've had a lot of good pro-democracy videos. I made a video about Pete Buttigieg, I made videos about Trump messing up, and I made multiple videos promoting Zelensky's ideals. So we're gonna continue to push pro-democracy content on this channel. All that I ask from you is to make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe, so if someday Trump does give up on Ukraine, which it seems like he is, the West doesn't completely break. I mean, right now, the US is essentially breaking the West's trade and war policies. So when it comes to NATO, when it comes to trade, the US is disrupting all of that, but we can come back from it. It might take a few Democratic administrations. I'm not sure people will quite trust the USA, right, when a Democrat gets back into office, but we can come back from it if we continue to build this resistance on a day-by-day basis. So again, thank you all for everything you've helped me build. We will continue to push back and see you all in the next video. Peace out.